Good afternoon, everyone. And firstly, thank you very much to all of the team in Italy and all of the people behind the scenes who Sarah mentioned earlier. Thank you very much for having us. I think this is our first ever presentation in Italy, which is very exciting. As Sarah said, my name's George. I work in Assessment Services Department in the Madrid office. And
hello, my name is Victoria and I work with George and we are both based in Madrid.
We're not going to have the cameras on the whole time, just for connection. But what are we talking about today, Victoria?
We are going to be talking about reading and listening skills young learners.
Exactly, but talking, reading and listening skills. So, well, as we'll see in a minute, I think one thing Victoria and I talk about in lots of our presentations is about integrating skills as far as possible, because I think that's one of the most natural ways we use language anyway. And I think even with little ones, trying to integrate as far as possible from as young as possible really helps. So we'll be looking at ways to involve speaking whilst preparing for the reading and the listening. Quick overview, Victoria. How are we going to structure things?
Yeah, we're going to start by looking at reading. So how we can offer our young learners more support with the skill. And then we will move on to listening and what we will look at some aspects that we may want to consider to improve their listening skills. And we will finish by looking at some hopefully useful resources.
Excellent. Right, I'm going to turn my camera off now. So to start off, we can have a little think about what young learners can do. Okay, so these are can-do statements, young learners can-do statements taken from our handbook, but all of our can-do statements are very closely based on the can-do statements that make up the CFR. I think there was a young learners oriented revision fairly recently of the CFR. So these, as I said, as closely as possible, reflect what students are expected to be able to do at each level of the CEFR. So have a look at these now. And I think we're going to have a quick poll. So we have 6 can-do statements here. 2 of them are from pre-A1 starters, 2 from A1 movers, and 2 from A2 flyers. So have a look at those. And if we could start the poll, let's see what we think. So match these up with pre-A1, A1, or A2.
Okay, you're seeing that now?
Lovely, I can see it, Sarah.
Great.
I think can-do statements are really useful at all levels, just to give, I mean, obviously us as teachers a good idea, but our students as well, and perhaps with, in the case of young learners, parents, just to show them sort of overall, you know, what we're aiming towards, why are we doing this, so that they will be able to do this. So have a quick go at that poll.
Seems to be something wrong with it.
Oh,
okay, it's looking
yeah, it's live now. Excellent. So we've got 2 of each.
And just to remind people to scroll down.
Yep, and we need to scroll down. There are 6. Ooh, a bit undecided with the first one. Second one's edging more towards A1, A2. Ooh, number 3. Number 3 is tricky. Number 4, mainly A1. Number 5, again, mainly A1. Number 6, pre-A1. It's always nice to have some disagreement in the chat box.
It is tricky when you look at them for the first time. I think
yeah, definitely. And in isolation, and we're not giving you very long to do this. So we are aware of that. I think we'll stop after 2 minutes, if that's all right, Sarah. Let's give it another 15 seconds.
Say when, and I'll stop it.
Okay, dokie. And as you can see here, and more in the next one, you know, these are reading and writing. The next ones will be listening, but even here we do have a bit of a crossover between the skills. So number 1, A1. Number 2, A1. Pre-A1, A1. Right, okay, Victoria, Show us the answers.
Yeah. Okay.
So A, or number 1,
Mhm.
yes, A1. So understanding short, simple stories about familiar topics with the help of pictures. We've still got quite a lot of support here. Again, we're moving towards stories now, rather than perhaps shorter text, but again, with that visual support. Number 2, Victoria?
Yeah. Number 2, A2 flyers. Because they need to understand short text, even if they do not know every word. So here we see that it is a bit less limited than in the previous Canvas statement.
Lovely. Number 3, everybody got the majority got this right, which is good. Yes, starters. So again, copy, I think, is the key word in this. In all of starters, there's only one task, which I think is the part 5 or the part 6 at the end of starters, where they are expected to identify vocabulary from the pictures. In all of the other situations, they are copying. Everything is there somewhere for them to copy. And number 4, or D, what have we got here? A1. What's the answer, Victoria?
Here A1, but it is.
Oh, we're going, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so this is, again, flyers. So simple written descriptions. Again, we're broadening it. Objects and people, maybe for movers. Objects, people, and events. We're just pushing it a little bit, I think, beyond A1. Number 5.
I can't see the
well, the majority went for A1, which is interesting.
Okay.
The minority, only 10% went for starters, which is encouraging, I suppose.
Yeah,
you know, we have faith in our students.
Yeah, here I think because of the simple sentences, it's more limited, so more for pre-A1.
And the last one, simple signs and notices. Again, the majority went for pre-A1, but this is movers. And if you think, which qualification really tests this at the beginning, Victoria? Moving beyond young learners.
A2 and B1, we can see this.
Yeah, exactly. So we do begin a little bit at A1, but it really comes in more at A2 key. Okay, moving on to listening, Victoria.
Okay. Let me see. Tell me when this. Okay. Now
yeah, we can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so same again with the listening, Sarah.
Okay.
If you can put that poll on.
There we go.
Thank you. Again, here we can see a bit more of a crossover with speaking. So the first one, ask someone and answer similar questions. And then I think the last one, F, answer questions about school activities, but again, integrate. They have to be able to understand the questions to answer them, you would hope. Oh. Can you see the polls, Victoria?
I can now. Yeah. The problem is when I'm trying to
move between. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Majority are saying A2 for the first one, A1 for the second one, A1 for the third one. A2's number 4 is pretty close between A2 and A1. Just, oh no, we're even. Oh no, number 5 is moving towards pre-A1 now. And the last one, we're looking at the majority is saying A1 at the moment. So again, some disagreement, which is always nice. It's boring if everybody says the same thing. Okay, should we have a look at the answers, Victoria?
Okay.
So the first one, we have gone with A2.
Yeah, and it is actually A1.
Yeah.
Okay,
not
ask
quite.
someone. Sorry, George?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Ask someone how they are and what they like doing and answer similar questions. Okay, so it is still quite limited because it is very restricted what they have to say, but there is still some room for freedom, so to speak. So A1 movers.
Lovely. Number 2, the majority gone with movers as well. Second place was starters. So yeah, this is starters. I think the key words here are very short stories in simple language. Again, that last part in the read and write, I think it's part 5 or part 6, that is a very short story, very simple language. In the listening, oops, sorry, number C.
Sorry,
Victoria?
George, go ahead.
No, it's fine, you go ahead. C.
Sorry. Understand simple conversations and everyday topics. Here, it is, I don't know what the poll said, but
the poll, we got 63% A1 and 30% A2.
okay, so it is A2 flyers, because here it is true that we have simple again, but here we're talking about conversations and everyday topics, so it is less limited. They have more a wider variety of topics within
Lovely.
basic level.
Number 4, we have 48% going for flyers, and I think it is flyers, is it not, Victoria? Yeah.
It is.
So again, building on, slightly complicating things. Obviously, we would hope that your students understand instructions given in more than one sentence in class, but within an exam situation, we try to keep things, as easy as possible, to level. E.
Yeah.
Everyone went for starters. Yes. No, the majority went for starters, just. So again, very simple, everyday objects. I think we look at this in the speaking test as well as the listening. And obviously, some more written description of simple things in the reading and writing. And lastly,
yeah, answer questions about school activities. This is okay for A1 movers.
Yeah, we've got 60. We've got the majority again, 43% going for movers. Lovely. So we took these in bits and pieces out of the handbook, but a lovely document for all of you, and you can find this if you just Google young learners can do statements. You have them all in one place here. If you can download this and print it out and put it up on your classroom walls, if you are in your classrooms or if you will be soon, I think it's a lovely thing just to have there as a reference. Also for your students, they can tick off what they can do and what they can't do, what they've learned. So yeah, really nice.
It can be used as a warm-up activity at the beginning of the lesson while the students are arriving, if you are in a face-to-face situation. And also, if you have fast finishers, you can give them these and they can be challenging each other, like working in pairs. It could work really well as well. And then also for a bit of fun, maybe at the end of the lesson, the last 5 minutes, I think it could work really well.
Lovely. Okay, so moving on to reading. As Victoria said, we're going to be looking at ways to stage and scaffold, so supporting learners towards being able to do the exam task, which again, we talk about this a lot for all levels. I think it's really important, if they will be taking an exam at the end of the year, to perhaps, especially with our younger learners, not just sort of drop them straight in it, but to look at the task and break it down into the parts, into the constituent parts that make it up, and then think about what are we testing here? How can we build that? And then what's the next bit the next skill that they need? So that's what we mean by scaffolding. And we're going to have a look at the conversation part of the reading and the writing. So here we have, I think it's part 2 in movers, where it's a dialogue broken down into 6 questions with 1 example. That's all multiple choice. So they should have had some practice with this for movers, but what we're going to look at is we'll take the flyers task, but the approach that we are using, I think, could be used pretty much at any level. It's more the order in which we've taken this and broken it down and then built it up again that we want to talk about. So in the flyers, oh, sorry. No, I was just going to say in the flyers, we have all of one side of the dialogue and then a combination of potential answers. I think there's one example and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, and one distractor. So one of those options will not be used and one of them will be an example. So a really nice place to start with this, again, is thinking backwards. Is that clear, Victoria? Do you think that's a fair thing to say?
I think it is, yeah.
So how could we start off with a task like this, Victoria?
Yeah, we could start by giving them these prompts, so these answers to questions, and then they have to, instead of doing what they usually do, which is to answer the questions, they are going to ask the questions. So in this case, if I say I'm fine, thanks, George, can you come up with question?
Or we could see what our attendees say. So
Okay.
A, what do you think the question might be if the answer is I'm fine, thanks? In the chat box, please. Excellent, Cynthia. Beautiful, lovely. A pretty straightforward one to start off with there. What about B? I had cereal. Oh, nice, Francesca. How are you doing? What did you eat? What did you have for breakfast? Lovely. Do you eat cereal for breakfast, Victoria?
No, I don't.
No, I haven't eaten cereal for a long time.
No.
Okay, so again, a pretty focused question. There aren't very many options that would result in that answer. Moving on to C. No, I didn't. Oh, nice, Federica. Did you watch TV? Did you eat cereal? No, I didn't. Exactly. So a much more open option now. I think you really open it up in terms of what are we really practicing here, Victoria?
We're practicing how students can think about the order of the question and how to ask the questions based on the input on the prompt here.
Exactly, and something like this might be quite challenging at first for some of our less strong students, but starting with some of this and building up again, I think is a really nice activity. I went to the shop to get some bread. Where did you go? Exactly. Lovely. Why did you go to the supermarket? E, I particularly like. So did I. Any ideas there? It's a much trickier, the so did I.
I think if our students get this right, we would be very happy.
Exactly, lovely. Federica, Antonella, Francesca, exactly, so did I. We've included this one because this is quite challenging, I would say. Using so did I, naturally, we still get, or I still used to get, students at B1 who weren't using it properly. So I think getting them used to these very natural answers as young as possible, you know, it can only be useful. And yes, I did. Again, a pretty straightforward past simple question, I think. So we already have some differentiation built into this this task, as we can see from the very closed answers to the, or the very closed questions to the much more open ones. But how could we add more support or challenge to this task, do you think, Victoria?
Is it a real question? Or
I don't know. Is it a real question?
I think we are going to tell them the answer in the next slide.
We're going to look at some potential answers in the next slide. So adding more support. This is fairly straightforward. I'm sure many of us have done this. We really wanted to do this with a whiteboard, but I don't think it works on Zoom, and it might be a bit chaotic with so many attendees. But you know, it's very old school, but it really works. So match the dialogue halves. Did you watch TV last night, Victoria?
Yes, I did.
Not yes, at my local supermarket. I think the news is so boring.
Yeah, so do I.
Okay, that's quite interesting in Spain at the moment, isn't it? So obviously, matching the dialogue halves. If you're teaching online, you can lay it out very simply like this. And as I said, get your students to use the whiteboard, gets a little bit more interaction, a bit more engagement going on. You can obviously do it on paper. You could cut them all out, mix them all up to add a bit more challenge at the easier end of things, or something like this. These colors are beautiful, Victoria.
They match the templates, George.
They do match the templates. So again, various ways you can do this. And it's a very old school task, but it's a great task, especially if we get them thinking about the relationship between, the answers and the questions. But I think starting with just the answers is a nice way to get them building their approach to a task like this. More challenge.
Sorry, George, I was thinking Victoria. That if you are working face to face, you can cut all the questions and answers up and ask the students to put them on the wall so that there is a bit more of movement and action.
Yeah, you could do it like a running dictation sort of thing.
They can have fun.
If you enjoy that sort of chaos, I always enjoyed a little bit of chaos in
a little bit,
classes, yes. A little bit, controlled chaos. So lots of different things you could do with this. For our stronger students, perhaps whilst, the less strong students are doing something like matching the halves, what could we do here, Victoria?
We could be tapping into fast reading skills. This is something that comes at higher levels, but we can start introducing it here and ask students to skim and scan the text for specific information. Or
sort of reading it quickly to get gist, to get an idea of the whole text. As Victoria says, this becomes more explicit at higher levels, but from what we know in Southern Europe, definitely, I'm not sure about the rest of Europe, I think it's pretty similar, but definitely Spain, Portugal, Italy, once we get up to sort of B2 level and higher, the weakest skill in an exam situation, the weakest skills are consistently reading and listening. Which surprised a lot of teachers. They all think it's going to be writing and speaking, but doing qualifications, it's the reading, the listening where they tend to not do as well. And lots of the time, we think it's because they haven't had enough practice of these different types of reading. So starting when they're really little will set them on a great path for later. So how could we approach this, Victoria?
We could ask them these questions. So they have to read the half of the dialogue, half of the conversation, and try to answer these questions.
Exactly. So these are more just sort of questions. They're going to have to think beyond or read between the lines, quite literally, with this task. But giving that to the stronger students for a few minutes, get them to extract that information, perhaps whilst your less strong students are doing their matching the halves or something, would be a really nice way to add a bit more challenge to this task. So we're testing their reading for gist, again a bit of skimming and scanning, a little bit of reading for inference with the last question. Yeah, a nice way to deal with this. Then once we've done that, Victoria?
Yeah, we can ask our students to share ideas for each gap. So once they have looked at the conversation from a more global point of view, then they are going to concentrate on the specific questions and to come up with ideas about how they could produce what Sally says. So produce Sally's answers.
Yeah, a few potential answers, and you'll always have those stronger students who come up with something silly, but as long as it's in English, let's think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So have a bit of a brainstorm, share their ideas, then give them the dialogue. And again, depending, you could ask them to complete the rest of the task individually. It depends very much on the sort of grouping that you're using in your class. The stronger ones, probably ask them to try and complete it individually. And then
they can compare answers in pairs and then check as a whole class activity. You can then give them the other part of the conversation, and then they can compare their answers.
Lovely. So that was just looking at one movers and a flyers task, but we've managed to pull out from this some really, sort of very specific use of English stuff, question formation, question answers. For our stronger students, we've got them practicing their global reading for gist, a little bit of skimming, a little bit of scanning, if you can time them whilst they're doing it, and prediction, which is so important for their reading and also for their listening. I think really helping students get used to using the time that they have within the exam to really predict what they should be listening for helps enormously in an exam situation. We all know listening, I think, is probably one of the most nerve-wracking parts of the test, because it's very instantaneous. You hear it and it's gone. So I think getting them used to predicting as far as possible will help them on the exam day.
Definitely.
So moving on, a little bit carrying on with the prediction. You should all be fairly familiar with this. This is from Starters, the part 4. This is a very, very short text, a very, very tight answers. They have a lot of visual support. This is all very much pegged at sort of pre-A1, so very simple vocab and very simple structures that we're asking them to complete. Move it up a notch to movers.
Yeah.
And
here
again, sorry, Victoria.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, so we see the same format here. So a text, a short text, the words that they have to fill in the gaps with. Here you can see that there is a bit of a difference here. We have some superlatives and ing forms, so a bit more complex. And then something that is new, that it's new when compared to Starters, is the last question, in which they have to choose a name for the story.
Lovely. And then if we move up to flyers, again, we'll use the flyers as an example, but everything that we talk about here is applicable both to movers and to Starters. So this is what the task looks like. No visual support for the words that they need to use. But again, we have a sort of pretty standard gap fill with, again, a bit of a lexico-grammatical focus, a bit more of a balance between vocab and grammar here, and a gist task that they have to come up with a title for a story. And what we're going to look at now, I would suggest doing over several lessons. Again, it depends on your class, on the variety of, well, the range of levels in your class and how much time you want to spend. But as with nearly everything, young learners, a great place to start is, Victoria?
With the visual input, with the picture prediction.
Exactly. So I would just pull this picture straight out, put it up on the whiteboard or print it out, make it big, and start off. What can you see? So quickly in the chat box, please, just to make sure you're all still awake and listening. What can you see? What can you see, Victoria?
I can see a boat.
Ellie's come in with an island. I'm going to see a yacht. Ooh, an island. A block of flats. Interesting. A boat, an island, sky, sun, sea. I'm sure in most sort of 10, 11, 12-year-old classes, or 9, 10, 11, at least one student will say 2 or potentially more sharks. Can you see those, Victoria?
Yes.
They could be rocks, but with a bit of imagination, I think they could definitely be sharks. Yeah. So we start off with a nice bit of brainstorming, getting them used to instantly brainstorming vocab whenever they see images I think is a great way to help them in their speaking, and later from movers upwards in their writing as well, starters as well in their writing, getting them instantly doing that. And it does take a lot of doing it, but making that routine will definitely help them.
And it's fun as well.
Yes. Pardon, Victoria?
It is fun. It is nice and fun.
Oh, it
to
is
see
fun.
what
It's
they
a bit of a
come up
break
with.
again. Yeah, and it's a bit of a break for you as a teacher.
Yeah.
5 minutes of brainstorming. Okay. What other questions could we ask? Ideas in the chat box, please. Let's see how we get on with this. Excellent, Ellie. I wouldn't like to assume that maybe you're from the UK with a name like Ellie Robinson, but it does take up a large amount of our conversational time in English, as you know. What's the weather like? That's the first one in our notes as well. What color is the boat? Who is the man on the boat? Where's the man sailing to? Are the sharks going to eat the people in the boat? Exactly. What did we come up with? Oh, nice, Anna. What part of the world is it?
Oh, nice.
Daniela, what will the story be about? Lovely, probably for our stronger students. How many people are there on the island? Oh, why aren't there any trees? Maybe they're behind the hotel. Would you like to live there, Victoria?
Yeah, no, if there aren't any trees, you know, it would
I
be
suppose.
too hot without any trees.
Okay, lovely. What did we come up with?
Lots of questions here. Where do you think this is? And this is similar to what you just mentioned. How many people are on the boat? What is the building on the island? Where is the boat going? What
Is
are
the
their
boat
names?
a fishing boat? Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we could do this for a good few minutes with our students, or put them into different groups, get them to brainstorm all of these. Next stage, Victoria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, once we've done that and we have activated the schemata, the vocabulary, all the background information, we can tell our students that we are going to tell them a story about the picture.
Different ways to approach this. My favorite way, if you were going to do this over a week or two, let's say, or 4 or 5 lessons, read the story aloud, and ask students to listen very carefully. The first time, I've done a lot of work with Karen Saxby, who works with Anne Robinson on the CUP Young Learners Books Fund for, etc. And Karen also writes on the Young Learners exams. She does it. She has a very good presentation available online about storytelling with young learners, and she says it's very important that the first time you introduce a story, it should be interrupted. It should be uninterrupted. Okay, so again, I would recommend doing this one class, reading the story with all of the answers, and then perhaps the next class reading it with the gaps. That's up to you, and you could read it. Third bullet point, I think, Victoria, and you know, make a beeping or a buzzing noise where the missing words are. But I think it would be nice, and maybe, as I said, from one week to the next, read the whole story and then revisit it the following week. So once we've read the story, finally, Victoria.
Yeah, finally we can give the students the task, and we should encourage them to read the story first, the whole story, and then focus on what comes before and after each gap. This is going to give them clues about the type of word that could fit in the gap.
Exactly. So give them the task without the options. I think it's important to say that. And once we get up to much higher levels, I don't know how many of you teach higher levels as well, but you know, for use of English part 1, where they have all those multiple choice options, I would always tell my students to try and do it first without the options, because we're really helping them, or training their sort of, well, again, their use of English, their syntax, their awareness of nouns, adjectives, verbs, etc. Get them to try it without the options, then give them the options and ask them to do the task. So we've broken this down now into 8 or 9 different stages, I think. Anything else to finish off, Victoria?
No, once they have done these parts of the task, which is more which pays more attention to the local part of the text, and then we can finish with a more global approach to the text, choosing the correct name for the story.
Exactly, and to add a little bit of challenge there, we can mix up the titles. Okay, so that's one extra stage, perhaps for your stronger students, and then we choose the title, which is, Victoria?
The New Cooks.
Exactly. Lovely. So there's a look at some ways to really break down and stage some of these tasks from the reading or the reading and the writing papers. I think, as I said, it starters, movers and flyers, but it's thinking about what they need to do on the day of the exam, and then just moving backwards gently from there. As much support as possible, and just pull the support away as they get closer and closer to doing the task on their own. Oh, we better hurry up. Moving on to listening. So I'm going to have a very quick look. We've only got time really to have a look at the part 1, but hopefully this will be interesting for you if it hadn't occurred to you before. So here is starters. I'd like you quickly in the chat box to tell us how many names are there? How many names are there outside the box? Yeah, you'll look at the bottom and the top. Yes, well done. 7 names outside the box. How many people are there in the picture? Yep, 7. So we've got 7 names, 7 people. As I think Jane said, 1 example, 5 questions. So there's 1 name that will not be used. Okay, moving on to movers. How many names outside the box? I don't know now who is answering which question. A bit tricky. Yes, movers again. So we've got 7 names outside the image. 1 example. How many people in the picture? 9. Lovely. So how many distractors do we have? Victoria? Oh, 3. That's all right. That's all right. Victoria was briefly distracted then.
No,
So
no, I thought it was a question for the participants.
No, well, it was kind of to everyone. And then on to flyers. So again, we've got 7 names, 1 example. How many people in the picture?
10 people in the picture, George. 10
people in the picture. So we have potentially 4 distractors or 4 people who will not feature. So we go back to starters again. Can you tell me about any similarities within this picture? About the people, things that people in the picture have in common. Lovely, yeah. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I think nearly everyone in the whole Young Learners suite of exams is always happy. They're doing things. They're all wearing shoes. Last time I did this, it was a disaster as well. So teachers are all way too imaginative for me. Okay, yeah. They're all smiling. They're all relaxing. They're all wearing shoes. Yes. Let's move on to the movers. What do the people in this have in common? And I want you, I didn't set that up very well. In terms of where they are, what they are doing, what they are wearing. So in the movers, where they are, what they are doing, what they are wearing. It's always embarrassing to learn that your instructions were a disaster live in a session.
Well, George, there is always room for improvement.
Thank you. Thank you. Having a party. Okay, and thinking a little bit more specifically. Yeah, they're all in the garden.
Maybe we can give an example, George.
Yeah, let's give an example. So if we look at the starters, the first one, we have one person running, one person kneeling, one person sitting, one person on a bike, one person standing or feeding the ducks, and two people near the tree. One person's up the tree, one person's behind the tree. So there's no overlap, really. Okay, again, color of the clothes as well, no overlap. Look at movers. We have two people sitting down. We have three people coloring things, two people up a tree, two people wearing yellow tops, four people wearing blue trousers. So there's a lot more overlap between the people within this scene. Okay, if we move on to flyers, Victoria.
Yeah, here we can see that we have two girls riding a bike and two boys drinking.
Two boys standing as well, who are both wearing yellow and blue in different combinations. We have two people sitting down, only one person reading. So again, there's a lot more there's a lot more overlap going on here. So if we move on to look at the actual questions, or items. So here's a photo of me and my friends at the park. Who's that? The boy with the cats. He's holding one cat in his arms. Okay, so we're really focusing in that this is the example, but we have extra information so the candidates can be sure that that is what they are. We have one aspect and then a backup. If we look again, the next one, Victoria, girl here behind the hair tree, behind the pear tree. What's she doing behind that tree? So again, we're backing up the information again at starters. Another example, there's Jill, got some bread in her hand, giving it to the ducks. Always two bits of information about the people and no overlap with the others. Again, reading, girl with the book, reading again. It's all backed up. So making students aware of this, I think, can be really helpful. Perhaps not so much at starters, but using these images and getting them asking questions, getting them asking each other questions, making statements about the pictures will really help them once they get to this task. Moving on to movers, again, we have more overlap here. So if we have just, oh, it's frozen. Maybe that's just me. Ooh, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, no, perfect. So just put all the questions up, Victoria. So yeah, carrying the birthday cake, we've got a bit of overlap with other people carrying, but we only mention that once. We mentioned the birthday cake, another bit of information, but not really explicitly linked like in starters. The woman cleaning the table. Yes, the table's very dirty. Again, it's not, there's one little bit of info there about her. So it's just making them, making your students aware of focusing in on the differences between people in the pictures. The starters image, people are all doing quite different things. This image, that's what I mean by overlap. So here we have three people carrying things. We have two people, exactly. So making students aware of that, getting them asking the questions, and hopefully it will help them when it comes to doing the task itself. We look at flyers.
Yeah.
Victoria? A little bit more tricky now. So boy, striped sweater, drinking lemonade. Three quite different bits of info there. And the girl on the bike, the one with the blonde hair, no, not her. So we're really adding a bit more complexity and a bit more distraction the higher up we go, which seems obvious, but I think making students aware of that and staging speaking activities using these that gets them automatically asking these questions, I think can help enormously. And if you prepare for starters, I think Sarah told me that starters and movers are more popular in Italy than flyers. But if we move on, Victoria, since the revision in 2018, you'll know that there is that additional tell me about question in the speaking. They can either say what they see or use their imagination. Okay, this is getting them asking these questions automatically or being able to describe pictures like this automatically will help them enormously once they come to movers writing, where they have to produce those sentences. And hopefully, as I said, getting them engaging with these images in this way early on will help them when it comes to the listening tasks as well.
So George, it can be so that everyone is paying attention. You can get your students to say three things about the boy or the girl, but one of them has to be false, and the rest of the class has to guess which one is false.
Exactly.
That way everyone is engaged. You are practicing speaking and listening at the same time.
And using their imagination, their creativity a little bit as well. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Jane, I mean, fairly similar situation in Spain. We still have, you know, A2 key is still quite big in Spain. It depends, I think. So just finish off by looking at some useful resources and activities. We appreciate this has probably been a very long day for a lot of you. What are we going to start with, Victoria? Oh, yeah, something from Anne Robinson. Want to talk us through this?
Yeah, this is an idea for your online classes, but I think, yeah, you can also adapt it to the face-to-face situations. Learners have 5 minutes to go and find as many things as possible. And then they bring the items back to the class to show the rest of the group. Okay, so
I'd imagine, yeah, and I'd imagine this is pretty doable in any typical young learner's classroom. You could do it with colors, with size, moving on to flyers, which I think is the example we're going to show. You can do it again with adjectives or with materials. I think materials is only introduced at flyers. I think maybe it comes in, no, I'm pretty sure it comes in at flyers specifically to practice what, Victoria? Victoria hates it when I ask her questions that we haven't prepared.
Yeah.
What do you think? Three things that are made from.
Made of, yes.
Exactly, to get that passive in, and that only comes in at flyers. But again, no problem practicing that at lower levels at all. So that's a really nice activity, as we said, either face-to-face or online. Another thing from Anne, I think, and there are plenty of these available in lots of places online. How can we use choice boards, Victoria?
We could give different options, different points, and then they can choose and come up with as many points as get as many points as possible by answering the different questions, for example, if you want to do it as a competition.
And you can instantly differentiate this. I think Sarah did a session in Italy a while ago.
Yeah.
A great one. I think it was aimed at sort of B2, maybe, Sarah, with that sort of use of English focused choice board. And they had to get a certain number of points to cross the board.
Yes, that's right. And they could choose the direction. But but the idea comes from primary, so it's really, really relevant.
Exactly. I think it's a lovely activity. And again, giving students, you know, as much choice as possible, even when they're little. I think it really empowers them and helps keep them engaged and motivated. Other free resources, some of our favorites are these posters. I think this is taken straight from the picture word books, which should be available from your exam centres. They should be able to get hold of those for you. Pegged at starters, movers, and flyers. We've done a couple of sessions on how you could use these to practice for the movers writing. They're really nice. They have a variety of different scenes. I think we have another one afterwards, don't we, Victoria? Exactly. And as I said, they're all quite carefully designed, all of these images bearing the young learner's vocab in mind. So that all the vocab there should be at level. And they're a great resource to use in class. I think what was our writing session called, Victoria? Right from the start. Yeah, you can find that on YouTube, and there are some nice ways to use these, as we said, to help prepare for the movers writing and then for the flyers writing. A lot of speaking involved as well in those. And as you can see within the picture word books, you have little let's talk activities built in there in the bottom right hand corner. Beyond that, Anne Robinson's blog, Teaching Together, she has a lot of great stuff there, and a lot of collaborators get involved there as well. I cannot recommend enough Karen Saxby's website, which is free and it's available there. Karen is quite an artist at the same time. And I think one of the hardest things, one of the most difficult resources to find, when you're teaching young learners are appropriate images in black and white.
Yes.
So the way you can use that, you have a huge variety of options of where and how you could use these. Yeah, practicing for the last part of the listening, but she has tens of these available free to download from her website with accompanying lesson plans for starters, movers and flyers using the same images. It's an excellent resource, so I can't recommend that enough. Great stories as well. She's very good at writing young learners' stories, and as I said, lesson plans, activities, all ready to go. Beyond that, if you haven't already, you should check out our Kahoots for young learners. Have you had a play with these, Victoria?
No, George, have you?
No, I haven't either. That's why I asked you. But we do have some official Kahoots based around the young learners exams, which I think are available from our website, or if you use that QR code. They are great fun.
We'll put the link in the chat for you.
Excellent. Yeah, Kahoots are great fun, and students get really engaged. And well, so do adults, actually, to be honest.
Yeah.
If you have a Kahoot account, I can't recommend it enough. And beyond that, Victoria?
Yeah, World of Fun. It is a website that is dedicated to young learners, so pre-A1 starters, A1 movers, A2 flyers, so resources for every level. Also information, teaching tips, and also the presentation George mentioned by Karen Saxby is there for you. So please,
her session on storytelling is there, which is very interesting. Some of it, you think, oh yeah, obviously, but then she gives interesting angles on things that you would think of normally. I'd recommend watching that. I think stories are, they're a great resource to use in class, but they've got to be used properly and sensibly. Lastly, you've probably heard about this quite a lot since September, but if you haven't already, Your New English Classroom section of our website is full of resources, tips, advice, lesson plans for the COVID classroom. So whether that be, face-to-face and socially distanced, or if you're teaching hybrid. I can't imagine teaching hybrid to young learners, but congratulations to everybody who is doing it. Teaching online and emotional support for learners, and all of the material on that section of the website was written last summer. So again, bearing the ever-changing COVID situation in mind.
There are constant updates as well, right, George? So
yeah, I think it's constantly being added to and developed. And I think that's all we have time for. Yeah. Well, we've got a few minutes left for any questions. I hope it was interesting. It's always difficult to do enough, really, in such a short amount of time. But we love presenting on young learners. Well, I love presenting on young learners. I don't know about Victoria.
Thank you very much to both of you. It's been really practical and great ideas and resources for everyone. Just wondering if there's any questions that we need to answer. As we're looking at the chat, I would just like to say that George and Victoria will be back again on Thursday, looking at another topic called the right criteria. So you're still in time to sign up for that one as well. We've got lots of positive feedback in the chat, if you can't see it. So I don't see any questions for the moment. Can you, Paula?
No, I don't think there are some. No,
we've put some of the links in the chat as well for some resources. It's very clear.
Very, very clear, yes.
Good. Well, thank you all very much for having us again.
Thank you very much.
And our session on Thursday, it is on Thursday, isn't it, Sarah?
Yes, Thursday,
Looking at writing slightly higher levels from sort of B1 upwards, but applicable to sort of A2 key and things as well. So if you're interested, we will see you there.
So we hope you'll join us on Thursday. But really a big thank you to George and Victoria. It was a fantastic session. And thank you to everyone for joining us. And we hope you'll come back for more sessions tomorrow, as we have another full day tomorrow. And then, of course, George and Victoria will be joining us for the third day on Thursday. So I hope to see you again soon. And thank you to all the team behind the scenes as well.